We're on? All right. Okay, so financial direction, not financial perfection. Yesterday, we went over how to get started. We went over saving 10%. And so start by just paying yourself that first 10%. So once you start doing that, the question becomes, now what? Let me make sure this is, are we on the Pro Presenter? Okay. So now that we're saving, now what? What do you do with the 90%? So I strongly advocate for the 65-20-15 rule. That means living on 65% of your income and doing your best to throw 20% onto debt and 15% savings. And why do I say 15% savings? Because most people in a job have some type of match. And I don't know what your job is, but sometimes it's anywhere between 2% to 5% where they will automatically reimburse or match that when you put that to a 401k. And so that's what I personally did, because that was an instant raise for me. I put that 5% in and I would automatically get 5% as a match from my company towards my 401k. But then on top of that, I would take that same 10% out of my check and I would pay myself. And that became a habit for me. And we'll talk about if you can't do that. Not everybody has the ability to do that, and that's perfectly fine. So I'll show you what to do if that's not gonna work for you. But 65% to live on, 20% for all debt, and then 15% savings at a max when you're paying off debt. So as you start to go through those payments, like I showed you, 5% 401k match and 10% to savings. And so 20% will go to all debt. And then the next question becomes, okay, well, I'm paying my debt, so how do I do that? And this is where everybody has heard the word snowball effect from Dave Ramsey and from other finance educators. And it is one of the best things that you can do. It's like making your bed every day. When you get up, you make your bed. It just completes a task in your mind, and it just kind of gives you that little dopamine rush of task completed, move on to next task. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna arrange all of our debts from lowest to highest, and then we're gonna pay those off in that order. So you're gonna pay minimum payments on everything except for the lowest debt, and you're gonna throw all of the 20% that you have left at that lowest debt first. And once that is paid off, you're gonna take all that same money plus the minimum payment on the next one and pay the next one off. But then comes the question, well, do you do the lowest debt or the highest interest debt? Well, I advocate for the lowest debt because it starts getting those tasks completed in your mind to a point where you feel accomplished, and then you keep going. Now, if you get to the point where you've got like a debt that's $4,500 and $4,700, but your $4,500 debt is 5%, and your $4,700 debt is on a credit card and it's 18%, yeah, put that one first. That's what I did. It's such a small difference, it doesn't matter. So, lowest debt's first. If you get two of the same, put the highest interest first. It's not a big deal, but always lowest to highest, and then you kind of get that snowball effect where you start paying off the debts, and then you throw all the money that you put into the first debt to the second, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth, until you have everything paid off except for the house at this point. So the key is when you prioritize saving that 10% first, and that is your highest priority. And again, if you were here on Tuesday or if you watched the video, it's after you've given your money to God. I'm only talking about the money after you've given the first portion to God, because that's what I believe. So after you've given your money to God, you're saving 10% as a priority. So when you put that as a priority and then you put debt as your second priority, it's so much easier to live on that 65% than if you try to arrange the 65% first on what do I want and then try to save, and then try to pay the debt. So if you prioritize saving that 10% first, that's the first step. The second step is you're going to try and set aside at least 20% of your income to just throw at debt. And again, I realize not everybody, these numbers are not going to work for everybody, and that's okay. So, and just to kind of drive this point home, when I was younger, I was making $400 a week, getting paid every other week. So $800 every 2 weeks. When I made $800 every 2 weeks, I lived on $800 every 2 weeks. And it wasn't a problem until I started to make more and spend more that I realized that I was spending more than I made and causing myself to go into debt. So if you prioritize at first that 10% savings, prioritize that 20% to debt, then it makes it much easier to live on that 65%. But if the 65, 20, 15 does not work with your numbers, if you're on a low fixed income or if you're just not making as much as you are spending, then 70, 20, 10 is a perfect number to work with. Basically, you're just going to do whatever you can as long as you're saving a few dollars for yourself to build up that emergency fund. And I stress that we, like we said last Tuesday, we don't want to do any less than 10% if that's feasible. So this lesson is going to be really, really short. It's just focusing on what we're going to do with the 90% left after we've started getting in the habit of saving that 10% every paycheck. And that 90%, this is the rule that I strongly advocate for. This is the rule that worked for me. If you can't do the 65, 20, 15, go to 70, 20, 10, and that's perfectly fine. But you just want to get into the habit of saving that money for your emergency fund and prioritizing that debt first to get that debt out of the way and living on the 70%, living on the 65%. So that's going to be it for tonight. Bob, you're good to stop. That's it for tonight.